Hi, recently I published a video about the Iceberg game that I pick up from Spiro, and that's the guy behind the Not a Wizard channel here on YouTube. And it's quite an interesting little game written in Commodore Basic, and it kind of inspired me to do something similar in C. Now, if you want to watch original Spiro's game, I will put links in the description of this video, and it's very interesting to see his development and the way how he transformed that same code and create several different versions of the game. It's quite interesting indeed to check it out. Okay, now back to our topic. So Iceberg game is a more strategy game where you need to force your enemy to hit the iceberg for you to win, and you play one move at a time. What I had in mind is something like a maze action game, something like Pac-Man style game. And I wanted to see how small the logic behind such a game can be and how easy it is to create such thing in C. Also at the same time I want this game to include every interesting bits inside, so I want a bunch of enemies chasing the player inside this environment, inside this maze. I want this player to be able to move by joystick. I want this player to collect some items to clear the level, and sort of things that you can find in games such as this. And that means that I needed to build enemy AI, sort of AI. That means that I need to build collision detection system. That means that I need to build controls, environment, maps, and sort of things like that. Also, I want to keep it really simple, so that means there is no graphics at all in this game. Instead, I use Petsky characters, modified Petsky characters, and we can see how I did that also. And at this point we can take a look together what have I done so far. Okay, here we are. Now I would like to show you first is couple of iterations of this game, so that you can see how did I started, what have I done firstly in basic and then later in C programming language. Now this is a first iteration, first version, and this is just creating random characters, placing them on the screen and generating these hearts that represent collectible items. And our player is this yellow circle down here, which I can control by joystick, and we can collect these hearts. And once we collect the heart, I just change the color of the player so that I have some kind of indicator that that everything goes okay. So the item disappears and we receive his color. So as you can see here, from line 110 to 170, that's the whole that's the main loop of the game. So we are just reading the joystick register and try to detect what action should we do, and just loop endlessly, and that's it. So that's iteration number one. So the second iteration is exactly the same, except I've added a single enemy that is trying to chase us around. Not doing a very good job at it at the moment, but it's trying. So yeah. Okay, next iteration. Now let me run this. Now this version has a couple of enemies, not just one. So, and as you can see, we are already starting to get really slow here. So as you can see, it's really slow. The enemies do react in kind of slow way, but they do react. Okay, so this is it. Let's continue. And now we are switching to C programming language. Okay, now we are in C programming language. As you can see, I change characters a little bit, just use single character for these obstacles, for the maze. I change characters for the enemies. So the enemies are now these X's, and everything else is the same, except we have a little bit more speed. The enemies do chase us around, but yeah, let's continue. So in this iterations, I was trying to just work on enemy AI, and I changed the enemies to numbers to match the array position, so that I can know which one is which. And as you can see, they are going all over the place. They're super crazy enemies. So yeah, try. Yeah, you can see here. Here is the problem. Now they just passing through without any proper reaction. Not very good enemy AI. It is fast. It's really fast. Now here we have a bit of a design change. So I decided to modify some Petsky characters. So the player is now little human, and the enemies look like enemy now. The targets are now a little bit circled. The walls of the maze has changed. So in this version, I implemented energy counter for the player. So when enemies stuck to you, they kind of suck your energy. And also I shrink this playground so that we have room for score and every other thing that we will need in this game. Everything else is almost the same. And you can see I have some bugs in memory. Yeah. Okay, so this is almost final version of the game where I positioned the playground a little bit better. I have some lovely background added. The enemies are not red anymore. Also, I kind of try to through these iterations I always modify slightly this enemy AI so that I can observe the behavior and see what can we do better. So this is our code. This is an action maze chase game written in the C programming language version 0.92, and here we have some memory registers defined, and here are the parameters for the enemies. We can have up to 10 enemies in the same time on the screen. Also additional variables for defined enemies, characters, colors, and so on. And then we have player parameters. And at the moment I have two Petsky characters defining player, and they are switching between them so that we have some animation on the player, so it's not just static single Petsky character. And then we have those targets, that's collectible items. We can currently have 12 of them. They can be in different colors defined by this array here. And then we have parameters and variables for the maze itself. So for the walls, for the background, for the size of the maze, the offset, and so on and so on. And of course this is array that defines the walls of the maze, so playground. And how this is done is each row is defined by 5 bytes, and if each byte defines 8 positions on the screen, so we convert this decimal number to binary, and whatever is 0 we don't place a wall, whatever is 1 we place a wall, that's it. And if you multiply 5 by 8 you will get 40, and that's 40 columns. And of course we have 25 rows. That's it. And here we have array of custom Petsky characters that I use in the game. Here's, for example, for the wall, for the player, enemies, different targets, so on. Okay, and then we have array of some musical tones so that we can create our effects, and then some additional functions, and then we have the first big function that sets our custom Petsky characters, and I believe that I used once or twice before this function in some of my previous projects. So it's basically very simple. We just copied whole set of Petsky characters in the predefined memory position, and then we override certain positions with our custom Petsky characters, and then we just tell Wikchip where to look for custom Petsky characters now, and that's about it. It's very simple. And then we have function for different functions for playing different sound effects. I didn't do much of a good job here. This is just copy pasting for the moment to see what kind of effects do we want in the game, and how to set it all up. Okay, and then this is a function that generates the maze, generates the border of the maze in one direction and the other, and then maze background, and then the maze walls itself, so that we are reading the array playground array for the map and poking on the screen. And then we have we generate targets. We use random functions to place certain amounts of targets or collectible items on the screen. And of course we do something similar with the enemies, so we are generating a bunch of enemies on the random position, and of course the player is the last one that gets his position on the map. Also at this point is just randomly selected position. Okay, we have read joystick function. It's pretty simple function, just reads what combination is pressed on the keyboard, on the joystick, or on the D-pad, and we just define by that we define the movement of the player, in which direction will it move. Also I defined here a fire button. I still don't use it in the game itself, but it's here and it's detectable. So okay, the next function is just blink player. This is a visual effect when the enemy is attached for the player and sucking the energy out of it. This is just beside the sound effect, we have also some visual effects as well. And then we have main function for moving the player around. This is a for if statement that enables the player to switch sides from left to right and bottom up and vice versa. And then we have next position of the player, and of course we need to pick this next position to see is it free or not. If it's taken, did we collect this item, collectible item, did we hit the target, or did we hit something else? And in case that we did hit the target, then we just increase the number of collected items. We have some sound, we update the status bar, and we check did we collect all the targets or not. So this is currently it. If we did hit something that is not our target and it's maze wall or something else, then we just switch back to all position. We don't move the player actually. And of course this part here is just for switching between two Petsky characters, so that player has some kind of sort of animations, not just static single Petsky character. And then we have function for moving enemies, and this is the most complex function in the whole game, but the logic behind it's really simple. So of course we do have some ifs for checking the borders and so on, But in general, how enemies are moving inside the maze, inside the playground, is rather simple. So what we have is we defined a random movement for each step. So, and the random movement for each direction, for the X and for the Y axis. And this if just checks that we don't have both directions at 0. That means that the enemy is stalled and currently sitting in single position. In case on each step when enemy is moving, we calculate something that is called distance, and that is the distance between the enemy and the player. And in case that distance is close enough, then we call this recall enemy direction function. And in that case, we are just trying to direct enemy to follow the player. And that's basically it. So in case that you get close enough to the enemy, then the enemy is starting to chase you. And of course we have some additional checking in case that enemy is stuck somewhere during this chase. We need to recalculate that the directions, and then the best way that I currently have is just randomly try to get out of the stuck position. So try to move a little bit left to right and up and down and whatever randomly, and try to avoid that obstacle. And that's the whole logic behind this enemy movements. And the only thing that I plan to do here is just to tweak a little bit these variables and see what's the best setup for the game itself. And of course, in case that this section here is just in case that enemy is attached for at the player, so we are hitting the player, then we are sucking the energy out of it. And we have some sound effects, and we need to update the status bar for the player, and we need to have those visual effects for the player. And of course we are checking whether player is left without no energy, no power, or still alive. And that's basically it. And then we have our main functions. Then we call initial functions to generate the maze, to set up everything. And then we have our main while loop. So while the player has enough energy, enough power, we are just reading the joystick. If we have any kind of action on the joystick, we are moving the player. And we have some small delay loop here. In case that you don't have any input from the joystick, then the player just stays in one position. And we are moving the enemies every second loop. And of course with each move of the enemies we have again some small delays defined here, and on each loop we have this additional 4 delay. And this is something that I should be playing around a little bit to fine-tune to have elegant movement in the game. Yeah, and this is it. This is the whole code, and now we need to continue developing this. And what I need to do next is I have at the moment just one playground. Perhaps I should have a couple of them. That was the idea, so that I can switch between them, and when each level is clear, that we have a different map. Also, I need to define some logic to increase difficulty, so like number of enemies inside the maze for each level. And I need to define perhaps the speed of enemies, or perhaps not the speed, but the distance where the enemies start to chase the player. Maybe to play around a little bit with that variable. I don't know. I need to figure it out and try to do something. So this is the final version of this game, and the reason why I decided to show you this way using this diff tool is simply because it's been almost 2 months since I actually finished this game and 2 months since I did any recording for this video. So this will be kind of a memory test for me also, and this will make things a little bit easier for me at least. So on the left side there is a previous version of the game, right side is the last version of the game. So let's go through it. And nothing significant happened here, as I can see. Then okay, I did change the target character a little bit, and the big difference is here. So I've added some game logic about increasing the levels, and these are some variables that are used during the game. So we have maximum number of levels are 9, and we have variables that define how many enemies it's going to be per level. So increase of the enemies, increase of the targets, and the distance when enemy is reacting to the player and start chasing it also changes for each level. So this is about it. And before we had only one playground, now we have 3 playgrounds, and they are cycling for each level. You have first playground, second, third, and then starting all over again. Okay, nothing has changed here. So the print status bar, different variables are used, nothing special about that. Okay, this is a big difference here because I need to change the position of the characters, and I use different bank, of course, because I had some memory problems on this old position, so I switched to new position, new banking defined here. And that's about it for that. So nothing here, nothing here, nothing significant here. Okay, this is the new function, create game playground, because when we cycle through levels I need to recreate the whole playground once again with different variables depending on each level. So this is that function that does just that. And of course here we have a little bit more complex array used. Instead of just one playground we have 3 of them, so we need to know at which playground we currently are. So what do we have next? Okay, this is not important. Okay, this part is simply just displaying the status bar additional information on the screen, a little bit more this game logic when you have some additional information when you're starting the game, generating the level, starting, prepare to play, and so on. And of course I've added fire button to use it as a pause the game, so you can pause the game. Okay, nothing significant here. And of course we have now when player dies we do have some effects. We need to define that the player is dead and we write the message on the screen. And of course we do have some additional functions when you clear the level, when the level is done, to generate a new level. Move the player, almost the same. The only difference here is that we check whether when you collect all the targets, what happens then. We have some animation blinking at the player, and then we need to start a new level. Okay, so this is about it. And what do we have next? Okay, in this part we are checking the player power. So if you lose all the power, what will happen then? So we call function player dead, and it simply just asks you whether you want to play again or not. And that part is somewhere around here. Okay, so this is the main function, And what is different about here, instead of just this while the player has enough power, we have two while loops. So this is the while power loop, and his parent loop is while game on. Game on is variable that is used to ask the player whether he wants to play again or not. So or is just starting the game. So at the beginning we need to initialize some starting variables, and we have to print, of course, status bar and create the whole playground. And then this while loop is almost the same like before, a little bit changed. The only difference is when you actually lose all your power, of course, when you're dead, the game will ask you, do you want to try play again? If yes, then you start from the beginning, nothing special. If you type N, then you just simply exit the game, and that's about it. So let's try to build this and see how does it look like. Oh, let's run it. 4109. Hey, level 1. Here we go. So the first level is quite easy. So 3 enemies, 3 targets. Okay, level clear. Level 2. So a bit more complex and a little bit more enemies and targets. Let's clear them. Okay, and we have just the targets left. There we go. And now we are going to the opposite side and just, oh bloody hell, this one. I have to go this way. Okay, level clear. So this is level 3, the most complex playground in the game. I try to collect all targets. Oh bloody hell. No, here. I need to get down. Okay, now we need to go up here. Get lost. And yeah, this will not work. Here we go. And then level 4. Playground number 1, but quite a bit more enemies and targets, so like okay, we need to get inside this chamber. Yeah. Go. This one. Okay. And then again at level 5 we have playground number 2. Get lost. And this is a random function, put all targets in one corner. That's great. Lost. And here we go. So this is the game. This is the whole thing. So thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Goodbye. Bloody hell. I think try again. Yes. And from the beginning. Yeah, great.